Hey folks, welcome back to my channel Relationship Haven. My name is Gary and I hope you're all having a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. In today's story, Opie found out his fiancée had been cheating on him with an airline pilot months before their wedding after his wife told him about their affair. Now she is begging for mercy, but will instead be getting served with divorce papers. Now let's get into today's story. My fiancé and I have been together for 4 years. We are both airline pilots who recently got engaged, and the wedding is in a few months. We were looking at buying a house and have actively tried to have a child together with no success. She often would say she loves our life together up until today. Yesterday, my fiancée confessed she has been cheating on me for the last 6 months with a coworker. She confronted me crying hysterically and fully admitted what she had done, that she had messed up royally and wanted me to ask her any questions about the infidelity. Back in December, she worked with this guy that she connected with who I've met before. She talked fondly of him then, and I was concerned at the time that this might be a problem in the future. This is a coworker that lives on the other side of the country and whom she rarely sees at work. I noticed she was hanging out with him every time she passed through a city, and I confronted her directly in February about it. She lied and said there was nothing to worry about since they connected as friends, etc. A few months later, she asked if it was okay if she took a road trip with this guy, to which I responded saying it was not okay, and that even thinking about it was improper, so she didn't go. She once invited him over with other friends and I met him. Maybe she wanted me to be less suspicious if I knew the guy. The whole night he was trying to win me over, which I wasn't going to let happen as I had my suspicions. Fast forward, she admitted to talking to him a bunch on the phone, and they sporadically had sex approximately 5 times over the last 6 months. I asked her why she was telling me now, and she said because she felt guilty about it and could not in good conscience say I do without me knowing about her indiscretion. He is leaving his wife, but now she says she doesn't want to be with him. She wants to put in the work, cut him out completely, and have a life with me. I asked why she felt the need to do it. We had spent the entirety of COVID living together and hanging out every day. Over time, she said she felt I was less interested in her, and she felt disconnected. I didn't initiate sex anymore. She had routinely turned me down early in the relationship, for which I stopped trying, so we had it when she wanted it. She never blamed me through this ordeal and has accepted all the blame, but I do know I'm no saint. It takes two to tango in a relationship, and we started to drift apart. I stopped organizing for us to do things, and she felt like she was dragging me to do stuff. In the spring, we talked about our problems, and I've been actively trying to do more and initiate more activities for us to do together. I was trying. She stayed in the guest room last night and cried till 1 in the morning, dry heaving all night. I woke this morning to the same thing at 6 o'clock. Like anyone in this situation, I am deeply hurt, emotionally confused, and feeling lost. This wound is deep and very fresh. I've been cheated on once before, which she knew, and she has been cheated on before as well. I obviously have strong feelings for her, but I do know cheating is a choice and lying and deception is a choice. Up until this point, she always has been a very honest, loving, and caring person who says she is very remorseful. If we do try to work it out, I feel like she will put in the work, but I don't know how I will feel in the future. I've definitely been going through most of the emotional escape mechanisms to cope with this news, and I know I'm not in the right mindset to make good decisions. Update. Day 6 since Discovery Day. So I told her from day 1 that if she cheated on me, I will leave her, and that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm in the process of moving out, and hopefully this week, I'll sign a year lease on a sick waterfront condo. She has taken it upon herself to stay at her best friend's place until I get my departure sorted out. Up until a few days ago, she was trying to come by asking to talk and be close to me again because she's afraid of losing me. We did more communicating in the last week than we did the whole relationship, but it doesn't excuse her actions. I have given her no direction on how to handle this situation even after she asked me what to do. So far, she has confessed to the affair and given a fairly accurate timeline with details that paint her in a poor light. She has unconditionally accepted the responsibility for her poor actions and accepts any decision I come to. She has explained to her family what she has done, informed all the wedding guests that she messed up and I left her for it. She has incurred all outstanding costs of the canceled wedding. She's recognized that she has destroyed a relationship, a marriage, and a family. She has shown me a confirmation of being signed up for a therapist and has blocked all forms of communication with the affair partner. She asked no questions when I asked for screenshots of the affair partner's last messages and missed calls, or about when the affair partner's wife reached out to me. All these things I have never hinted, asked, or demanded of her. This was all thought of and initiated by the wayward wife. The affair partner's wife and I had a half-hour phone call, and I filled her in on all the info I had. That poor woman. My situation is bad, but hers is far worse. I have reached out to a lot of my close friends for support and guidance, and the show of support has been very uplifting. I'm embracing all the hurt feelings when I get triggered by things while packing. It has helped immensely. I have shared with the wayward wife a book on how to help a partner heal after an affair, and she took it upon herself to fully read it the same day I shared it. Her attitude about giving me space has changed and affirms she is committed to winning me back and doing whatever it takes. Only time will tell if she has the constitution to keep it up. That will be her true test if she is remorseful and willing to improve. I have no idea what I'm going to do down the road, but all I can do is take it day by day. Final update. 10 days after Discovery Day. I've been chatting with her best friends who are having a tough time, supporting her as well as talking to the other betrayed spouse. I uncovered some texts and talks with the wayward wife. This is what I think happened based on the evidence and a bit of interpolation. We were a very outdoor activities kind of couple, and being stuck inside in close proximity really took a toll on both of us. We unfortunately didn't have the mechanisms to really express this and bottled these up. I became reclusive, and she felt unloved and unwanted, which wasn't reality. She has been known to self-destruct when she feels abandoned due to her previous boyfriend's cheating and leaving abroad with no notice. She didn't know the healthy way of dealing with those emotions and was too scared to ask for help from her friends, family, and partner. This is why no one in her circles knew about this affair. She met the affair partner, and both became interested in each other's lives. He was a victim to a recent trauma, losing a pregnancy that the wayward wife didn't know of. The friendship progressed, and they took solace in each other's conversation. This escalated into an emotional affair and a physical affair later on. They were infatuated with each other, expressing love in the first few months. They had made an agreement on the conditions of this arrangement as to not blow their cover. The affair partner seemed to take every opportunity to work with my wayward wife or follow her to different cities. This continued for a few months, but he was becoming unhappy that she wasn't putting in the effort to see him. He wanted to see her and for her to stop sleeping with me, which she refused. This caused friction, and they started to bicker and fight. When they were apart, they fought and broke off the affair multiple times in the last few months of it. After they would separate, he would meet up with her, and they would start back up. They were addicted to the fantasy and the good feelings that were brought with it. During the entire affair, the wayward wife was extremely stressed out in her daily life, which I noticed. The wedding was fast approaching, and we were buying a house soon in the worst market possible, and we were unsuccessfully trying to have a child for the past 1.5 years. From the beginning, I noticed the lack of boundaries with the affair partner and called her out on it multiple times. She lied and wanted to continue to fantasize. I think as we approached the wedding, the guilt and pressure from the affair partner and stresses of life really got to her. She knew that she couldn't confess because I would leave her, which she brought up 2 to 3 times in the last 6 months. I believe she was more worried about losing everything she had than the affair itself, which is shown by a pattern of doubling down with lies and deceit. The delusion of everything will be okay if I wait long enough, but I can't break it off because the affair partner wants to tell his wife. I'm sure both the wayward wife and the affair partner were disgusted with themselves over what had transpired. How this ends is a bit of a mystery, as there isn't much concrete evidence of how things transpired. I believe both parties wanted out of the situation, but to what end isn't known. The wayward wife finished the conversation by crying to the affair partner and saying that confessing was her only option. She claims that she told him the affair was done and that she doesn't want to leave me and has to confess. After breaking contact with the affair partner, he continued to message, call, and leave voicemails. Dozens and dozens of them over the next few days. He waited 2 more days before telling his wife some of what had occurred. After a few more days, the wife had reached out to me in case I didn't know. Overall, this was a 1.5-month emotional affair and a 6-month physical affair. I left my wayward wife, and I am currently moving out. I need to work out these issues on my own, and I'm seeking therapy to help cope. Soon we will start a minimum 6-week no contact and go from there. Hi OP, After reading your story, here are my thoughts on the situation. I believe that the reason they truly feel sorry about what happened is because they are now facing the consequences of their actions. There is a big difference between that and actual remorse. Obviously, they didn't feel bad, or it would not have happened more than once. She wouldn't have tried to get you to be friends with him if she was truly sorry. She wanted you to be okay with him so that it could be easier for her to keep him in her life. In my opinion, there is no mystery here that needs to be solved. The truth of the matter is that she prioritizes her own pleasure over your pain. I wish you the best of luck with your situation, Opie. Let's see what the comments had to say. Hannah Malou said, I'm disturbed by your narrative, Opie, in which you seem to find reasons why they had to get together and have the affair. Sorry, Opie, but she had lots and lots of opportunities to put a stop to it way before it ever became in any way serious, let alone physical. She knew exactly what she was doing, what she was getting into, what she risked losing, and you know what, it didn't matter. She just went right ahead and went through with it all. You need to get your game head on now, Opie, because you will never look at her as the same woman again. You will never ever be able to look into her eyes and see anything even remotely resembling innocence, and that alone will suck the very essence out of you and your relationship. Good luck. NWT 1384 said, everyone in this needs therapy, not just you. Please stop taking any responsibility or making any excuse for either of them having an affair. Yes, they had reasons, but you will be surprised by the real reasons that would be uncovered in therapy for them. You need to heal yourself, and do you really want to be bonded with someone who dismisses their relationship like that? You all are not married, no kids, no mortgage, so it's best to not even attempt reconciliation. It takes 2 to 5 years for a relationship to recover from infidelity, and it may not. Good luck. Thanks for taking the time to listen to today's story. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's story. If there's a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me.
Today I'll share with you guys how I brought my own wedding to a screeching halt when I read my vows. My fiancé and I met in a group setting through coworkers. One of our friends was a man named David. He was my best friend, so it was really nice that he got along with the girl I started dating and eventually proposed to. He quickly agreed to be my best man at the wedding. When my fiancé found out, she was really happy and said it would be perfect. I suspected her bit, but not enough to ask about it. She was friends with him too, after all. Well, fast forward to the week before our wedding. My soon-to-be bride was really excited and had been on her phone a lot. I assumed it was all wedding-related planning because she'd be on her phone and stop me in my tracks to ask what I'd prefer between the two choices. These choices didn't really matter to me by answer to make her happy. Now that I know what I know, I think she would make up things to ask me so that I wouldn't suspect her of communicating with another man. My best man, to be specific. She and I held our bachelor parties on the same night. It was extremely disappointing to me when my best man called me to let me know he couldn't attend the bachelor party he planned for me. He told me his mother was in the hospital unexpectedly and he needed to be there with her. Well, this was totally forgivable, right? How could I be so heartless to deny or suspect him? I still had several friends with me throughout the night. I'm an active guy, so we all played basketball outside before getting cleaned up real nice and going to an upscale lounge downtown. I felt like royalty, and I hope my fiancé was feeling the same way. We were actually already living together at this point, but we agreed to abstain from sex the month before the wedding. I had no idea how difficult that was going to be. We took turns each night sleeping on the pull-out bed in the living room. When I arrived home that night, my fiancé was already home and crashed on our bed. She looked like an angel that partied for the first time tonight. I tucked her in while she slept, but as I looked around, I noticed something shiny on the floor by the edge of the bed. I picked it up and held it in my hand, looking closely. It was a fancy gold cufflink. How interesting. My wheels immediately started turning. My woman did not own any cufflinks, and I only owned one pair that did not look like this one. That could mean another man was in our bedroom. I started impulsively rubbing my face, head, and neck. This was stressful. Just then, my fiance's phone went off. It was set to vibrate only, but I could hear it on the nightstand. While she slept, I stood beside her and read her messages. The string that stood out was the one with my best man. The most recent text was from him, 4 hours earlier at 9 p.m. As I scrolled up, I realized she invited him to her bachelorette party, even though that wasn't normally how these things worked. Further up was much worse. She told him that tonight was going to be their night, because the next day she would belong to me. He asked her if he'd ever be able to have her again. She said if he tempted her too much, he might get away with it. Messages from months ago showed how their conversation went from strictly friends to flirty. He started asking about her body, and she started showing him. They made arrangements to hang out one day, a day that I thought she was at work. And then he messaged her, asking if they should have done that. She replied with, "I've never been more sure of anything." Just like that, within 1 hour, I went from a blissful man about to be married to a broken-hearted fool plotting revenge. I sent myself 6 screenshots of the worst messages they sent, obviously escalating in severity. My plan was to read these messages when I was supposed to read my vows. This was going to be terrible, just like what she did to me was terrible. I deleted all traces of me collecting evidence, then I took some NyQuil and crashed. The next morning, she was already gone. She left me an old-fashioned handwritten note that said she left early to get her hair and makeup done. Imagine getting all dressed up, only for someone to announce that you're a cheater in front of all your friends and family. What a great day. At this point, I was only bitter. I didn't miss her or want her to be sorry. I was ready to dump her because I couldn't believe how much she let me love her. She was my only one, and I was one of two. I got dressed really nicely. I smelled wonderful, and my hair was never so on point. A part of me felt like it was for nothing, but I convinced myself it was worth it. I thought about warning my dad about what I planned to do, but I didn't want him to convince me not to or warn other people. Just then, my best friend texted me to ask if I was on my way to the venue. As soon as I got there, he greeted me outside. He was dressed really nicely, but the only thing I wanted to know was if he had cufflinks. In a gamble, I pretended to notice he was missing one, even though I couldn't really tell. He was surprised I noticed and looked embarrassed. He said it must have got caught on something somewhere because he lost it. I asked to see the one he had up close, in case I happened to find the match. At this point, his heart was trying to get out of his chest. He was sweating. I was so amused by this but played dumb. He showed me the cufflink, and it was an exact match to the one I found and had in my pocket that very moment. I looked up at him very seriously for a few agonizing seconds. I was trying to stop myself from screaming or punching him. He could see it and asked me if I was okay. I snapped myself out of it and plastered on a fake smile. I told him of course I was okay. I was getting married today. I slapped him so hard on the back that it made him jump. I just walked into the venue. After the mind-numbing mingling and grand procession, I realized I never wanted to have a traditional wedding ever again. It all seemed so stupid and meaningless. That's when my would-be wife walked down the aisle. She was as beautiful as ever, and all the memories of how we met and how long we'd been together poured into my head. It was extremely unfair, and I sobbed. People around me seemed to notice that I wasn't happy crying. I was devastated. I barely controlled my sobs until the point where the celebrant asked me if I'd like to read my vows. This was it. I started reading messages between James and my fiancé. I mentioned the date and time of each one. It was just odd at first for everyone to be waiting patiently for me to get to the point. But then, as they listened, I started to read messages that were flirty and not something either of them would be proud of. They started to shift uncomfortably and looked around, noticing that everyone in the building was staring at them. My bride asked me what I was doing and what I was reading. After another text, She told me to stop. Then I read the really inappropriate messages. Him telling her he needed to bury himself inside her again, and her telling him to come over because I left the house. By now, everyone was talking amongst themselves, and my fiancé was trying to grab my phone from me. My best man suddenly walked out, but he was followed by 5 of my groomsmen. As she tried to grab my phone, I shouted that I had pictures and videos they'd send each other if anyone wanted to see them. That's when people started getting up and leaving. The celebrant asked if we were still getting married, and I laughed loudly and sarcastically. My ex was now on her knees in her white dress, sobbing at the altar. Her bridesmaids had no idea what to do. They just stood there, frozen. Some of them might have known she was sleeping with him, or at least saw them being flirty. It was great to see that no one rushed to her side to help her feel better. I went outside to see what had become of my best man. His car was trapped between the 5 men. They were yelling and screaming at him, in disbelief that he would betray me as he did. At this point, I was done with all the drama. My head hurt. I felt like I got the revenge I wanted and just needed to take a nap. I told them to back off and let him go, that keeping him here wasn't going to help anything. Just as they backed off, my would-be bride came running out of the venue. She was being chased by her bridesmaids as they shunned her, calling her a terrible person. She ran behind the best man's car for about 10 yards before he saw her in the mirror and stopped. She got in and they left. I turned around and saw a majority of our wedding guests watching what just happened. Many of them walked up to me and offered me hugs and words of advice. It was weird. It was like I was suddenly in a grief counseling session with a mixture of our family and friends. Well, they weren't her friends anymore. Neither of them received support or contact from the people they once relied on and knew so well. They moved out of state together, but only lived together for 1 year. After that, my ex moved back in with her disappointed and criticizing parents. What a gigantic waste of time. She tried to ask me out again after all this, and I called her crazy. I still haven't heard from my best friend, but that's fine. I couldn't be friends with him anymore anyway. My friends and family never let me give up hope or get too depressed. I haven't started dating again, but I know a good girl I'm gonna ask out. It's hard to believe that someone would be with me and only me. That's because my ex planted a seed of doubt. The only way I know to fight this doubt is to take my time getting close to people. Ask them anything I want to know and tell them what's happened to me so they understand where I'm coming from. Wow, Opie. Not many people experience the level of stress you went through here. I love how you had the strength and determination to collect and read messages at the wedding for all to hear. I think it was the best way for her to learn from her mistake. I'm so glad to hear that you had so much support on that day and afterward. You did not deserve to be betrayed like this by your best friend and fiancé of all people. I enjoyed listening to your story and finding that even though they escaped criticism together, they didn't last very long. That had to add another sting of guilt to each of them. I think at that point they definitely realized they screwed up their own lives too, not just everyone they held dear. It sounds like you know how to keep moving forward. Thank you so much for sharing this with us, Opie. We appreciate you and your resilient emotional recovery. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Ub told me that he never even considered voice-activated recorders until he talked to his nephew. Let's Go Our marriage had always been built on a foundation of trust, love, and mutual respect. Over the years, we had tackled countless challenges, always emerging stronger and more united, but the issue of open relationships had proven to be a divisive force, casting a dark shadow over our once happy union. It was an issue that had first surfaced a few years ago, and it had continued to rear its head in our discussions ever since. On that particular evening, the tension in the air was palpable as we sat Down to have yet another conversation about open relationships, I felt a heavy sense of dread in the pit of my stomach as we began to discuss the topic, fearing that it might be the straw that broke the camel's back as I listened to my wife passionately argue in favor of the idea. I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of hurt and betrayal. It felt as though she was asking for permission to cheat on me, to break the sacred bond that we had spent nearly a decade nurturing. My mind raced with questions. Was our love not enough for her anymore? Was I no longer enough for her? I tried to maintain my composure, swallowing the hurt and anger that threatened to overwhelm me. I knew that this was an important conversation, and I couldn't let my emotions get the best of me. I needed to express my feelings clearly and calmly in the hope that we could find some common ground and resolve this issue once and for all. I didn't marry you to share you, I told her, my voice steady but firm. I could see the irritation flicker across her face, but I continued. When we made our vows, we promised to be there for each other through thick and thin, to love and cherish one another, and to be faithful to each other. I don't believe that an open relationship aligns with those values, and I'm not willing to change them now. Her response was dismissive as she rolled her eyes and told me that I was overreacting. She insisted that exploring an open relationship wouldn't diminish our love for each other, and that it could even strengthen our bond by introducing new experiences into our lives. But I couldn't shake the feeling that allowing other people into our relationship would only serve to erode the trust and intimacy that we have built over the years. We argued long into the night, each of us growing more frustrated and hurt by the minute. By the time we finally went to bed, we were no closer to a resolution, and I couldn't help but feel as though a chasm had begun to form between us. Little did I know that this was only the beginning of our marital turmoil. As the weeks wore on, the rift between us only seemed to grow wider, our intimacy waned, with my wife becoming increasingly distant and uninterested in physical affection. I found myself lying awake at night, plagued by thoughts of her betraying me behind my back. She began spending more and more time with her friends from work, as well as reconnecting with old friends from her childhood. While I knew that it was healthy for both of us to maintain our own social lives, I couldn't help but feel an annoying sense of unease each time she went out without me. I found myself obsessively checking her social media, trying to glean some insight into her activities and the people she was spending time with. It was during this time of escalating suspicion that I had a casual conversation with my nephew about the latest technology in surveillance devices. He told me about voice-activated recorders and GPS trackers and how they could be used to discreetly monitor someone's activities. As he spoke, I felt a mixture of intrigue and guilt wash over me. The idea of spying on my wife made me deeply uncomfortable, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss in our relationship. I desperately needed answers, and this seemed like the only way to get them without resorting to hiring a private investigator, which was an expense I couldn't afford. After conducting some research on the best devices available, I made the difficult decision to purchase two voice-activated recorders and a GPS tracker. When they arrived, I carefully installed them in her car, my hands shaking slightly as I grappled with the knowledge that I was invading her privacy. I knew that I was crossing a line, but I couldn't bear the thought of living in the dark any longer. For the first few days, I listened anxiously to the recordings, hoping to find some evidence that would either confirm or dispel my suspicions, but it wasn't until the end of the first week that I discovered the painful truth. My wife had been unfaithful to me. The sound of her voice, mingled with those of the men she had been seeing, was a gut-wrenching confirmation of my worst fears. I also found a conversation in which she badmouthed me to her friends, describing me as lame and boring. The betrayal cut deep, and I felt as though the wind had been knocked out of me. It was one thing to know that she had been unfaithful, but to hear her speak so disparagingly about me was a whole new level of hurt. As the initial shock began to wear off, I knew that I couldn't just sit idly by and let her continue to deceive me. I needed to take action and protect myself both emotionally and financially. I opened a separate bank account, careful not to arouse suspicion by transferring money from our joint account. I also began the process of distancing myself from her emotionally, no longer initiating physical contact or offering her any affection. With a heavy heart, I realized that our marriage was beyond repair and it was time to take the necessary steps to end it. As difficult as it was to accept, I knew that I deserved better and that I needed to be strong in order to face the challenges that lay ahead. Determined to protect myself and my interests, I decided to consult an attorney. I presented him with the evidence. I had gathered the recordings of my wife's infidelity and her disparaging comments about me. I explained the situation and my desire to file for divorce. My attorney listened carefully, offering his sympathy and professional guidance on the best course of action. He informed me that while Michigan is a no-fault state, the evidence of her infidelity could potentially be used to my advantage in negotiating the terms of the divorce. Especially when it came to alimony, he advised me to gather more evidence if possible to strengthen my case and ensure a fair outcome. Taking my attorney's advice to heart, I decided to gather more evidence of my wife's infidelity. I rented a car to follow her discreetly, ensuring that she wouldn't recognize me or become suspicious as I trailed her movements. I documented everything I saw with my phone: photos of her kissing other men, videos of them holding hands and embracing, and even some of them groping her in public. It was excruciating to witness these intimate moments between my wife and other men, but I knew that it was necessary in order to protect myself during the divorce proceedings. With a growing sense of resolve, I forwarded all the evidence I had collected to my attorney. He assured me that this would significantly bolster my case and that he would do everything in his power to ensure a favorable outcome for me. With my evidence securely in my attorney's hands, I decided it was time to take the final step and file for divorce. My wife was served with the papers at her workplace, and her reaction was nothing short of explosive. She called me, her voice shaking with rage, hurling insults and accusations at me, but I refused to engage in her outburst, knowing that I had made the right decision and that there was no turning back now. In the meantime, I moved out of the house we had been renting, putting physical distance between us and giving myself the space I needed to process the emotional turmoil I was experiencing. It was a difficult transition, but I knew that it was a necessary step toward healing and rebuilding my life. The day of the divorce hearing arrived, and I steeled myself for the confrontation. My wife's attorney attempted to argue that I was required to pay alimony, but my attorney countered with the evidence I had gathered. He presented the photos, videos, and recordings demonstrating her infidelity and betrayal. The judge listened carefully to both sides before making a decision. In the end, he agreed with my attorney and denied her any financial support. Relief washed over me as I realized that the battle was finally over and I could begin the process of rebuilding my life. In the months following the divorce, I learned through one of her friends that my ex-wife had moved in with one of the men. She had cheated on me with her friend, confided in me that the man was a deadbeat, unemployed, and contributed nothing to their household. It was a bittersweet revelation, but it also confirmed that I had made the right choice in ending the marriage. As I continued to heal, I began to rediscover my own sense of self and independence. I pursued hobbies and interests that I had neglected during our marriage, and I slowly started to rebuild my social circle. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. With time, I felt ready to dip my toes back into the dating pool. I knew that I wasn't quite ready to commit to a serious relationship, but I was eager to explore the possibilities and meet new people. I tried my hand at online dating, attending singles events, and even accepting setups from well-meaning friends. I approached each new encounter with an open mind and heart, taking the time to learn about myself and what I wanted in a partner. There were moments of awkwardness and disappointment, but there were also moments of excitement and connection. Through it all, I reminded myself that I was on a journey of self-discovery and that each experience, good or bad, was a valuable lesson. As the months passed, I began to come to terms with the reality of my situation. I had survived the heartbreak of my marriage collapsing, and I had emerged stronger and tougher than before. I made a conscious effort to work on myself, attending therapy sessions and participating in support groups for divorced individuals. Through these experiences, I learned that healing is not an easy process, but rather a series of ups and downs. There were days when I felt like I had made great progress and others when I felt like I was back at square one, but I remained committed to my journey, trusting that with time and effort I would find peace and happiness once again. As I continued to heal, I came to understand that my life was not defined by my failed marriage, but rather by the choices I made moving forward. I began to embrace my newfound freedom, allowing myself to dream and imagine a future that was entirely my own. I knew that I still had a long road ahead of me, but I was determined to make the most of the opportunities that lay before me. I started to set new goals for myself, both personally and professionally. I focused on my career as a city surveyor, pursuing opportunities for growth and development. I also made a conscious effort to maintain a healthy work-life balance, dedicating time to my hobbies, friendships, and self-care. Although I had been deeply hurt by my ex-wife's betrayal, I chose not to let it characterize my life or hold me back. Instead, I used it as a catalyst for growth and transformation, emerging as a stronger and tougher person with each new day. I took another step forward on my journey toward healing, knowing that I was creating a new beginning for myself, one filled with hope, happiness, and
I once looked up to my cousin. I thought he was a great guy and we were close like brothers. I was also dating a girl. I was deeply in love with her and planned to marry her someday. I thought my life was perfect. One day I came home early because a colleague offered to cover my shift. I was pretty tired, so I accepted and went home. Arriving home, I found them in my bed having sex. Both of them were shocked, to say the least. I told them I wanted them to be gone by the time I got back and left the house. They were gone by the time I did get back, but she left me a note telling me she was sorry and to call her when I calmed down. I didn't call her. I texted her saying that I'd gather her things and drop them off at my cousin's in a few days, and that she was staying with him now, not me. I followed through with that. It took about a week to transfer everything. Both of them tried to apologize, but I didn't have anything nice to say to them, so I said nothing. I just knocked on the door and handed the bags to whoever answered before leaving. My cousin called me multiple times to try to apologize, but I refused to accept it. 3 years have passed since then. I went no contact with them. I didn't bring it up to the rest of my family or any of their friends. I'm not sure why. I just didn't. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize, so I answered. It was my cousin. He sounded really happy and was acting like he hadn't destroyed my life. He explained he and my ex were getting married, and he wanted me to be his best man. I was so angry that he had the utter gall to act like nothing was wrong and lost my temper. I yelled at him and called him names before hanging up. He sent me a text telling me the offer still stood, and if I didn't want to be his best man, then he just simply wouldn't have one. A few days passed by and I had an idea. I texted him back and apologized. I sent a paragraph of bullshit saying I was still angry, but this could be an opportunity for the three of us to heal and move past it. He was overjoyed and said he paid for everything, and he'd help me pick out a suit if I wanted, which I accepted because I sure as well wasn't going to spend any money on his stupid wedding if I could help it. The wedding day came. I had spent the week prior writing a speech, putting all the negative feelings that had bottled up over the years into words on paper. The wedding was pretty good. I'm sure one of them had some nice, well-paying job or something, because they must have spent a decent bit of money on this wedding for how nice it was. Our entire family was there, as was a decent chunk of my ex's family. Eventually, the time for my speech came. I just remember feeling really nervous as it built up to it, and my voice kept faltering when I was reading it out, but I didn't, and still don't care, at least I got it out. I explained what these two horrible people had done to me. I called them the worst names I could think of, and wished them the worst. Then I left. I was expecting some kind of dramatic moment from all the guests, gasps of shock, and all that, but there was none of that. Everyone was completely silent. On my way home, I got a call from my ex that I had ruined the wedding, and both of them were so upset, and she asked me why I do this. She told me after I had left that a lot of the people they had invited just couldn't look at them the same anymore. I told her that they deserved it for what they'd done to me, and everything I'd said in the speech was true. Since then, I've gotten several calls and texts from others in my and my ex's family offering support and telling me how sorry they were that I experienced that. I'm not sure if I feel better having done this, but it did bring me great catharsis when people were telling me the wedding was ruined. At least now they felt at the very least a fraction of what they've made me feel. I was struggling a lot, and I'd just gone back to simply functioning like I was before the wedding. After I came down from getting my own back, I don't at all regret what I did, and I still feel satisfied that I got payback. I was making plans to take my own life after what my ex did to me. I hadn't told anyone for obvious reasons but my mom, uncle, and cousin, the same cousin whose wedding I ruined. He came to me and told me they'd pay for a private counselor since the mental health department of the NHS is under-equipped to say the least. I went to therapy, found a counselor who was very helpful. He taught me a lot. I got diagnosed with PTSD caused by the discovery of the affair. He's been a big help and has encouraged me to give casual dating a try to build confidence in myself and get used to rejection as a normal part of life. I signed up for a few dating sites, although I'm avoiding Tinder like the plague. My counselor specifically suggested I stay as far away from Tinder as I possibly can. I've not been very successful in that avenue, but it's pretty much in line with what I was expecting. I've talked to a few people and even got a date scheduled, but she stood me up and ghosted me, which hurt. I'm doing much better now mentally than I was before. In a way, I feel like what I went through has made me much stronger as a person and has taught me on how to be careful with the woman I choose to be with. OP, when someone puts you at risk for STDs, gives you PTSD, and tosses away all the emotional and financial health you've invested in a dedicated relationship, you don't owe them a thing. You certainly did the right thing by causing a storm at their wedding. The people there deserve to know what happened. I hope you're doing better now and focusing on whatever makes you smile, and please be careful how much you let your cousin and ex back into your life. They have yet to show sufficient genuine remorse, which says a lot about their character. Matter in fact, don't let them back into your life at all. Now that you've got your revenge, I would cut them off completely and just focus on yourself and building your life back together. Thank you for sharing your story. Let's now get into our second story for today. My story actually goes back a few years, but the current situation with the pandemic has sort of brought it back to life in a way. I turned 39 last December. My girlfriend's birthday is 1 week before mine and my daughter's falls in between, so we tend to have a birthday week celebration. We had been together for nearly 7 years at the time, married for almost 5. I thought we were very happy. The speed with which everything changed shocked me. All of this started back when I was 32 and my daughter was 4. My ex-wife was 31. My ex-wife joined a new gym because of a promotion they were having. It was a very expensive high-end place. It was after that the trouble started. The details of the cheating aren't that interesting, so I'm not going to spend much time describing it. For about 6 months my ex-wife became distant, picking fights a lot, going out on girls' nights, etc. After about 6 months of all this, I went away on a business trip, and when I came home my ex-wife had moved out. Maybe 2/3 of all her stuff, and most of my daughter's stuff were gone. In the kitchen there were divorce papers. The note? Nothing. She was offering 50-50 custody and didn't want any money or the house. Now it might be important to know that at this time I was already earning 6 figures plus bonuses and commissions. Due to some very wise investments and careful planning, I expect to be a millionaire by my 40th birthday or soon after. But I guess she wasn't willing to wait. She is a stunning and beautiful woman, so it's not too surprising she was able to meet the guy she did, especially in revealing gym clothes. I didn't know this when I found the divorce papers, but the man she left me for was already a millionaire. He was also 45. But I didn't know about the other man at the time. All I knew was my wife had left with our child and left behind divorce papers. She wasn't answering my call or anything. Her parents and siblings didn't know where she was. Eventually I talked to her, but she didn't tell me about the other guy. She just said that she wasn't happy and she wanted to move on. After a couple of weeks, what convinced me to sign the papers was when I received an invitation to her second wedding. I signed the papers, and she remarried 3 months after leaving me. I'm giving kind of an abridged version because the details of all this aren't so unique. Once I was divorced, I got to see my daughter again, and basically she spent half her time with me and half her time with her mother. I focused on being a better and more present father. I redoubled my efforts to work out and established a thorough exercise regimen. I took some courses about investing and trading and made a fortune. I even discovered a new hobby: woodworking. I would find used furniture, usually that had been thrown out, and I would refinish it. Eventually I started dating again, but it was nothing too serious. I was more concerned with having another woman around my daughter. She never really warmed up to my ex-wife's second husband. My daughter often said that he tolerated her, but that wasn't. She didn't use those exact words, but that's what she described. Eventually, I met my current girlfriend. We've been together about 3 years now, living together for two. My girlfriend is from Thailand and is 10 years younger than me. She studied therapy and worked in a spa. She and my daughter get along great, and my ex-wife is very jealous. My girlfriend and daughter enjoy spending time together in a way I don't think my ex-wife has experienced. For example, my girlfriend and daughter both have long hair and enjoy watching videos online on how to make very elaborate braids and hairstyles. My daughter enjoys this more than the expensive toys my ex-wife is always buying. Time for the plot twist. The lockdown period was not kind to my ex-wife's new husband. He worked as a business consultant and lost about 75% of his clients when the companies wanted to save money. They might hire him again in the future, but now it's tough. He still has plenty of money, but he was essentially living paycheck to paycheck. Furthermore, it turns out he was also heavily in debt. I don't know all the details, but I've heard he has hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit card debt as well as outstanding loans. He had to sell his house, and they moved into a condominium. He had sold off a lot of his assets to cover most of the costs. He is still comfortable, but their lifestyle took a drastic downgrade. The upside for me, my girlfriend, and my daughter is that my daughter has been living with us full-time for nearly a year. I happily volunteered to take her while they were dealing with their financial situation. The three of us have already visited my girlfriend's family in Thailand, and after the pandemic situation is over, we are going to go back and have a wedding in Thailand. We are tentatively planning on relocating to Thailand. My daughter visited Thailand with us, and we haven't fully talked about it, but she is excited about living in Thailand with us. She has even started taking Thai language lessons online. I don't know how this will work exactly, and it's not like it will happen tomorrow, but I guess I'll just have to wait and see what happens. Anyway, that's my story. I hope it can help as a source of encouragement and motivation for people going through something similar. Remember that things can get better even after a bad situation. OP, there's a very real phenomenon at work here. Affair down. Cheaters tend to be insecure. They're often narcissistic, and they need that sweet, sweet narcissistic supply to feel validated and happy. The people they choose in an affair are typically manipulative and cloying, giving your cheating ex a sense of inflated ego and cheap love that simply doesn't exist in a long-term relationship after the easygoing initial stages. Your cheating ex builds shallow relationships with people and is too self-involved and self-victimized to put in the work it takes to grow old with you, bolstered by a secure and deep foundational love. I'm happy to hear that you're doing well. Thank you for sharing your story, and I wish you the absolute best going forward. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened.